Welcome to the Health Headliner podcast by Tudu Digital. Our content is informational only and not medical advice. Please consult your provider. Now, let's dive into today's headlines.
Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive with us. This time, we're taking a look at what happens to your brain when you actually put your phone down, even for just 72 hours. You guys sent us a news article from Medical Express and a scientific study from a journal that Computers in Human Behavior. And we're going to unpack this together and see if we can answer this kind of wild question. Can going phone-free actually rewire your brain?
Well, it's really fascinating stuff.
Yeah.
You know, we know that the brain can change and adapt based on our experiences. You know, we call this neuroplasticity. And it's a pretty incredible thing. And so this research takes that concept and kind of applies it to something we all experience every day. Like that pull of our smartphone.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I thought was so interesting about the Medical Express article. It jumps right in and says that scientists actually saw these alterations in brain activity after only 3 days of smartphone restriction. They even highlight a figure in the study that shows these changes. But before we get lost in that, I'm just curious, like, how are they even measuring these changes in the first place? It sounds kind of science fiction-y to me.
Yeah, it's definitely cutting-edge science. So what they did is they used these MRI scans to peek inside the brains of 25 young adults. And each participant underwent 2 scans, one before 72 hours of smartphone restriction and one after.
Got it.
And during the scans, they were shown images of smartphones. And this is a technique they call cue reactivity.
Oh, cue reactivity. Okay, so is that like when I'm sitting at dinner with my friends and everybody's talking and then someone just pulls out their phone and even though my phone is like totally silent in my pocket or in my purse, whatever, I still feel this urge to check it.
Exactly. That's it. That's your brain reacting to that cue, which is associated with a potential reward. So, you know, that reward might be a notification, a message, or even just like that little hit of dopamine you get from scrolling through Instagram or whatever.
Right. Oh, that makes sense. Okay.
Yeah. And the researchers, you know, they were smart about this. They used 2 types of smartphone images, inactive and active, to see if the brain reacts differently to just the sight of a phone or seeing it being used.
Wow, that's so smart. Okay, so what did they find? Like, did giving up their smartphones for those 72 hours actually lead to any noticeable differences in their brains?
Yeah, the findings were really compelling. One of the things that they noticed was an increase in activity in a part of the brain called the nucleus accumbens, or NAC.
NAC. Okay, that doesn't tell me much. Like, what is the NAC and why should I care about it?
Well, the NAC is like a key part of your brain's reward system.
You
know, the system that makes us feel pleasure and, you know, motivates us to seek out things that we enjoy. And so
I got you.
The fact that activity increased in this area after the smartphone restriction suggests that going without your phone might actually make your brain more sensitive to rewards that don't come from your smartphone.
Hold on. Are you saying that, like, ditching my phone could make, like, finishing a big project at work or having a really great conversation feel more rewarding? Like, could it really be that simple?
Yeah, well, that's one interpretation. It's almost like the brain kind of recalibrates itself when it's not constantly bombarded with the stimulation of the smartphone. And so it could be that in the absence of those digital dopamine hits, the brain just becomes more attuned to, you know, other more natural sources of pleasure and reward.
Okay, you've got my attention. But it sounds like there's more to the story than just the ANOC, right?
Yeah.
Were there other parts of the brain that showed changes after the 72 hours?
Yeah, they also observed changes in the anterior cingulate cortex. Or ACC for short.
ACC, got it.
And this area plays a role in impulse control. And helps regulate our responses to stimuli.
So is this why people talk about feeling more focused and less impulsive after they do, like, a digital detox? Does that mean that, like, taking a break from our phones could actually strengthen our ability to resist those urges, to constantly be checking for notifications?
Yeah, it's possible. The study suggests that restriction period may have enhanced the participants' ability to control those urges. You know, maybe making them less likely to mindlessly reach for their phones.
So earlier you mentioned dopamine and serotonin, which I know are neurotransmitters.
Yeah.
They're like the chemical messengers in our brains, right?
Exactly.
And they're like super crucial for mood and motivation. Did the study look into how these neurotransmitter systems might be affected by smartphone restriction?
Yeah, absolutely. They found a shift in the relationship between brain activity and these neurotransmitter systems after the restriction period.
Okay.
And this kind of suggests this like pretty complex interplay between, smartphone use and brain chemistry and, how we experience cravings and rewards.
It's kind of unnerving, this whole idea that our brains could be rewired by our phones.
Yeah.
But it's also kind of exciting, Like if something as simple as just putting down our phone for a few days can have such a noticeable effect on our brains, like what other changes are possible, It makes you think about like the power we have to shape our own brains through our habits and choices.
Yeah, that's true. It really highlights how plastic the brain is. But it's really important to remember that this study really focused specifically on brain activity.
Right.
It didn't directly measure, things like mood or well-being.
Right.
So, while we can see these changes in the brain, we can't definitively say that those translate to people's everyday experiences.
Okay, that makes sense. But speaking of mood, I'm curious, did the researchers look into that at all?
Yeah.
Like, did they find any connection between going phone-free and feeling happier or less stressed?
So they did use these questionnaires to kind of assess mood before and after the restriction period. But interestingly, they didn't find any statistically significant changes overall.
Wait, so even though their brains were showing these signs of like being less focused on those smartphone rewards, they didn't actually feel any different.
Yeah, it is surprising, isn't it?
Yeah.
It really kind of suggests that the relationship between brain activity and like our subjective experience is more complex than we think.
Right.
But, it is worth noting that some individual participants did report, feeling better after the restriction.
Okay.
So, while there wasn't a huge change across the group, there were definitely some people who, felt a positive impact.
I find that really interesting. Do you think it's possible that certain personalities are just more susceptible to those positive mood changes? Like maybe some people are just naturally less attached to their phones.
Yeah.
So taking a break doesn't feel like such a big deal for them?
That's a really great question.
Yeah.
And it turns out that the study actually did look into, potential connections between personality traits and brain activity changes.
Okay.
And, this was kind of preliminary, but they found some interesting links between individual differences in, smartphone use patterns and the extent of those brain activity changes after restriction.
So like someone who's constantly on their phone.
Yeah.
Like they panic if it's out of sight for even a minute. They might show more dramatic changes in brain activity compared to someone who just like checks their phone a few times a day.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, think about what that could mean for, developing more personalized approaches to managing, smartphone use. Like if we can understand how personality influences the brain's response to restriction, we could maybe tailor like interventions or strategies to be more effective for different people.
Yeah. It's like personalized brain training for our digital habits.
Okay, so we've talked about, these parts of the brain lighting up after just 72 hours without a phone, the roles of dopamine and serotonin.
Right.
And even, hints that personality might play a part. So like stepping back from all this, what does this actually mean for like someone listening right now?
Yeah.
Like what's the big takeaway?
I think the main takeaway is that even short periods of smartphone restriction can have a real impact on brain activity, potentially affecting your sensitivity to rewards and your ability to control those impulses.
Right.
And it suggests that, taking breaks from your phone could actually help you kind of retrain your brain to be less fixated on those digital cues. And more attuned to, other sources of reward and satisfaction.
It's like hitting the reset button on your brain's reward system.
Exactly.
Instead of constantly seeking that quick hit of dopamine from your phone.
You're giving your brain a chance to rediscover the joy in those everyday things.
Exactly. Yeah. And while the study didn't find a huge change in mood overall.
Right.
Those individual reports of feeling better after the restriction.
Yeah.
are definitely something to pay attention to.
Okay.
It hints at a potential link between, smartphone use, brain activity, and well-being that we need to look into more.
It makes you wonder if we're just constantly bombarded with notifications and updates. Are we missing out on those subtle shifts in mood and well-being that come from just being present in the real world?
It's a valid question.
Yeah.
And it kind of speaks to the need for, more research to really understand this complex relationship between smartphones and our brains.
Yeah, we're just scratching the surface here. But even these initial findings are pretty eye-opening.
Yeah.
So knowing all of this, would you consider doing a digital detox yourself? What kind of experiment would you try?
Yeah. I've actually been thinking about trying a digital detox myself. Maybe even just starting with a few hours each evening, putting the phone away and just engaging in activities that don't involve a screen.
Right.
It'd be interesting to kind of observe, any subtle shifts in my own mood or, cognitive processes.
Yeah, it's amazing to think that we have this power to influence our own brain activity through something as simple as managing our phone use.
Yeah.
This deep dive has been so eye-opening.
It really underscores the importance of being mindful of our technology use.
Yeah.
And finding ways to make sure it's enhancing our lives, not controlling them.
Absolutely. And we'd love to hear from you, too.
Yeah.
Have you tried a digital detox? What changes did you notice? Share your experiences and any questions you have down on our website.
And if you're inspired to try your own digital detox experiment after this deep dive, let us know how it goes.
Yeah.
We're always interested in learning from your personal insights.
This has definitely given us a lot to think about.
For sure.
It seems like we're really just beginning to understand how these powerful devices are shaping our brains and our lives.
Absolutely.
Here's a final thought to leave you with.
Okay.
What if our brains are indeed adapting to this constant presence of smartphones? What might that mean for our attention spans, relationships, or even our capacity for deep thinking and creativity?
Those are important questions to ponder.
They are. The answers might surprise us.
Yeah, for sure.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
Yeah, thanks everybody.
Until next time, stay curious.
Thanks for tuning in to the Health Headliner podcast by To Digital. Like and subscribe for more health news and breakthroughs. Stay healthy and informed. See you next time.